So, welcome everyone to our class today. And our class will start with a question. Naturally, we will try to have answer in this class. The slide says that the question is that what situation or factor makes a language global? And basically, we can ask this question in a different manner. That is why a language becomes a global language. We have already understood what is a global language, and especially many reasons are there of becoming a language global. The common answer that may come that a language becomes a global language for the cause of the speaker's number. Okay. And in case of a language, there are several kinds of speakers. First come first, that is the native speakers. And secondly, the speakers who use the language as the second language or international language or a foreign language. That means the number one position is that the number of the native speakers is not important to make a language global. It means that a language becomes a global language not because of the number of native speakers. We know who is the native speaker of a language. In case of Bangla language, we are the native speakers. And Bangla language is also used in Bangladesh, West Bengal, and some other parts of India. In that scenario, we have also known that in our initial class, we have learned that Bangla language is 10th or 8th in the world among the native speakers number. And if we go to our second language, that means the English language, we see that the people living in Great Britain, USA, New Zealand, Australia, and Canada, and some Caribbean countries, they use English as their native language. But the number of native speakers is not important in case of making a language global. But how many speakers, whether they may be second language users or international language users. So the number of speakers who use the language is very important for making a language global. For example, once upon a time, Latin became an international language throughout the Roman. And as you see that nearly 40 countries were there that were included in the Roman Empire. And you know the country that is England, Wales, Portugal, Spain, France, Italy, Australia, up to Asia Minor and some other Mesopotamia and Middle East countries, Syria, Lebanon, Iraq, Jordan, and Israel. So when a Roman number was an international language, that language was used by nearly 40 countries all over the world, the countries which were included in the Roman Empire. That Roman language was used as an international language at that time, not because that the more number of people were subjugated, not because the Roman were more in numbers. So the Roman language was used by many countries, and the people who used Roman as the native language, their number is less. However, the people who had been using in Roman language, this is for the cause that the people were subjugated by the Romans and they were compelled to use Latin language. And it means that the Roman were more powerful. So when Roman language was used by many people of this world, the situation was that the Roman Empire was more powerful. So the number of native speakers is not important for making a language global, but the important thing is that the power of the country is important. So what sort of power? When the Roman military power declined, so of course that is the military power. So when Roman military power declined, Latin remained for a millennium as the international language for education. So there is a close link between language dominance and economic, technological, and cultural power. And this link will be clear when we will be discussing later on. Either it may be the political power, economic, or cultural. Without a strong power of politics, or of economics, or of culture, no language can be successful of becoming a medium of international language. So the important thing of making a language global is power. And what sort of power? Political, economic, and cultural power. These three sorts of power are important for making a language global. So we have got an analogy of it there that Roman Empire was once upon a time a vast empire, and for this reason, Roman language was used by the people who were under Roman rule. When the Roman military power declined, then the Roman language became the language of education only, not an international language. So language has independent, no language has independent existence apart from the people who speak it. And language only exists in the brains, mouths, and ears and hands and eyes of its users. When the speakers or the users succeeded on the international stage, their language succeeds. And when the speakers or user fail, their language fails. So the power, both economic and political power, is are important for making a language global. And there is an example. And language will be in the hands, brains, mouth, and ears of its users. And if we move on, we see that other languages become international language over the years. And they become successful. And there are some popular belief in these cases. Often we hear that a language is a paragon on account of its perceived aesthetic quality, clarity of expression, literary power, and religious standing. We know that aesthetic power of a language, we see that if we speak a language, if we if we um, uh, if we pronounce a language, some language becomes more aesthetic. What type of aesthetics of a language? Suppose, for an example, we see that Hindi song is popular all over the world. Why? Because many people of the world do not understand the meaning of Hindi. But for the aesthetics quality of Hindi language, Hindi songs are listened by many uh, person of this world. This is one reason. This is the aesthetic quality of a language. Some language has the capability of clarity of expression. Then that is, with the language we can express our opinion very clearly. Or literary power. Literary power then means we see many great literature in that language. And also the religious standing. In this regard, Hebrew, Greek, Latin, Arabic, French are among those which at various times has been acclaimed in such terms, and English is no exception. So Hebrew once upon a time was, and Greek was aesthetic quality, and they have clarity of expression. However, Latin became a language of education. Arabic became a language of uh, many religious books, Arabic language, and French as well. So we see this language, Hebrew, Greek, Latin, Arabic, and French, they had this quality, that is aesthetic quality, clarity of expression, literary power, and religious standing. Such kind of power had been there in this language, that is the Hebrew language, Greek language, Latin language, Arabic language, French language. Okay, so for this reason, once upon a time, this language dominated the world. Many people once upon a time had been using Latin, Greek, Arabic, and French language, but they are not at present. And English language is a language that this language has aesthetic quality, clarity of expression, no grammar, less number of grammars, literary standing, and also in some cases we see many books or great literature are written in English language. So this language, Hebrew, Greek, Latin, Arabic, French, and English, these languages have that qualities that they become the global language. But one thing we should admit that, of course, the clarity of expression or the inherent beauteous aspect of a language is important for making a language global. We have to admit this quality. And many people also commented this view that the English language has less grammar than other languages. Okay, so the clarity of expression and the less grammar, that is the grammatical rules of a language. If the grammatical rules of a language becomes tough or very problematic to follow or to remember the grammatical rules of a language, that would be a hindrance for making a language global. So many people will say that English has become a global language because it has less grammar. Other will say English doesn't have a lot of ending on its words, nor do we have to remember the difference between masculine and feminine and neuter gender. So it must be easier to learn. So another point some people will put that English language is easy to use. And for this reason, English language has been the global language. But we see that the logic that we have put here that may seem contradictory in case of Latin, French, and Greek language. So Latin, French, and Greek language has a quality of aesthetic quality. They had the quality of that this language was used in many Greek and literature, but they are not the easy language. Latin is also tough language, French as well, and Greek language. Still, they dominated the world, and many people once upon a time had been using this language. So easiness is not a reason that a language will be global. It would be the cause that language is easy to use, so it became a language of the global communication. In that case, Latin, French, and Greek wouldn't be the global communication language. That is the point. Latin was once a major international language, despite its many inflectional endings and gender difference. So Latin has many grammatical inflectional endings and also the gender difference, as we see. French too. French language also had such kind of problems, despite its nouns being masculine and feminine. So at different times and places have the heavily infected Greek, Arabic, Spanish, and Russian. So these languages are not easy languages, but people once upon a time in previous period, they had been using this language. Still, this language had some problems. So ease of learning has nothing to do with the global status of a language. So if anybody say that this language is easy, English language is easy, and it has become the global language, this is not important, and this is not very logical. In which way? That we have proved that Latin, Greek, French, Russian, they become international language, but they are not easy language. And as for the notion that English has no grammar, a claim that is laughable and reasonable. Okay. So what is the examples? The point can be dismissed by the reference of the last 20th century reference grammars. The comprehensive grammar of the English language, for example, contains 1,800 pages and some 3,500 points requiring grammatical exposition. So if it is the case, then we can't say that English is an easy language. So English is also a very tough language to use in case of grammatical rules. So this is not to deny that a language may have certain properties which make it internationally appealing. So one thing is that, of course, a language will have some characteristics that will make the language appealing, that this other people will accept this language. For example, learners sometimes comment on the familiarity of English vocabulary, deriving from the way English has over the centuries borrowed thousands of new words from the language with which it has been contact. Okay. So one reason that English language got its vocabulary from several sources. In case of Bangla, we see that the many words are derived from Arabic and Sanskrit and some other languages. But in case of English, they derived their vocabulary, that means the new words, from several sources. And what is the sources? Because English people spread all the parts of this world, and from that corner, they picked new word and put it in their dictionary or in their vocabulary. And they have claimed their word that this is the English word, but the source is from other language. That is also a point that English language has been the global language. The word welcome is included in English as a foreign vocabulary. So it is an example. The way of taking new words from other languages gives English a cosmopolitan character, which is seen by many as an advantage for a global language. So in case of English vocabulary, though English language got its vocabulary from several sources, from several parts of this world, from several languages of this world, so English language has a very cosmopolitan characteristics on the basis of its vocabulary. So this is another reason that English language becomes appealing to many people. For the lexical point of view, English is far more romantic than German language. Okay, so absence in English grammar of a system of coding social class difference makes the language more democratic. And another thing is of English language, that is, for example, we use we and you and I both for every gender and social class. When the if 10 female person speak in a situation, they will use this pronoun we, and even if they would be male, they will also be using we. That means these pronouns we, you, and I, these pronouns do not have the gender difference or the social difference. Even the king use I, even a general person, they can use I, you. So they do not have the social class difference and the gender difference. In this regard, English language is democratic. But in French language, we see the gender difference. But in Greek and Hebrew language, we see also such kind of difference, social difference and the gender difference. But English in this point is a democratic language, is a very romantic language as well. So language doesn't become a global language because of its intrinsic structural properties, or not because of the size of its vocabulary, or not because it has been a vehicle of a great literature in the past, or not because it was once associated with a great culture or religion. So these are the reasons that cannot make a language global, that cannot give the guarantee that this language is very beautiful to use, very aesthetic is used, very harmonious to use. As for Hindi language, we see, not because of the size of the vocabulary, it has a large vocabulary, not because the vehicle of the great literature, as we see, as we have said a little bit earlier, that in English language we see great literature, and not because it was associated with culture and religion. So these are the reasons that cannot make a language global. These are all factors which can motivate someone to learn a language, of course, but none of them alone or in combination can ensure a language's world spread. Okay, so all these causes cannot make a language global. Even a single case, alternatively, cannot make a language global. So, indeed, such factor cannot even guarantee the survival of a living language, as is clear from the case of Latin, learned today as a classical language by only scholars and religious few. Okay, so these causes cannot make a language global in one hand. In another hand, they cannot give the guarantee that the language will survive next time. So if it is so, with these qualities, Latin language has become now a language for only scholars and the religious perspectives. Once upon a time, Latin language had been used in nearly 40 countries, but at present, you see the scenery that the Latin language is used only by a few number of scholars of Europe. Correspondingly, inconvenient structural properties such as awkward spelling do not stop a language achieving international status either. So alternatively, if we put the coin upside down, then we see another scenario, that is the hypothesis that what would be the position if a language becomes tough for communication. This scholar, he has also suggested that no, if a language becomes tough, that would not be a hindrance of making a language global. It means that a tough language, a grammatically inflectional language, can also be the global language or international language. Why? What are the causes? Indeed, a language has traditionally become an international language for one chief reason. What is the reason? The power of its people. especially their political and military power. So a little bit earlier, we had been talking that the power of the people of the language is an important factor of making a language global. And what sort of power? Political and military power, first of all. We had also said that the economic and cultural point is also important. But the important thing is that, of course, the power of the people of the country, that language will be the global language. Why did Greek become a language of international communication in the Middle East over 2000 years ago? So a question or supposition was there that what is the reason that Greek language was dominated the Middle East once upon a time, 2000 years back? Not because of the intellect of Plato and Aristotle. We know that Greek is one of the earliest civilization. Roman civilization and the Greek civilization are the earliest ancient civilization. And from the Greek civilization, we have got the scholar Plato and Aristotle. And these scholars, not for these scholars that Greek language dominated Middle East. The answer lies in the swords and spears wielded by the armies of Alexander the Great. So Alexander the Great was a student of Aristotle. Okay, so the power of scholars like Plato and Aristotle is not important that the Greek language spread Middle East, but this is the power of Alexander the Great, and that Alexander the Great spread his dominance towards several parts of this world, and for this reason, the supposition proves that for the cause of the power of the Alexander the Great, Greek language once upon a time dominated the world. So again and again, we are coming to the point that a language becomes a global language for the cause of its power of the people using this language. Why did Latin become known throughout Europe? It is for the great army or the military power of the Roman Empire. So same situation, we have also got that Roman once upon a time dominated the several parts of this world, Roman language, because of the Roman military power. Why did Arabic come to be spoken so widely across Northern Africa and the Middle East? But in the same way, we also see that in the African and Middle East, Arabic was a dominated language, a dominant language. This is for the spread of Islam carried along by the force of the Moorish armies from the 8th century. So Moorish army, that army spread Islam in the most part of Africa and the Middle East, and for this reason, Arabic language was a language. So the reason is that the power of Moorish army, the power of Roman Empire, the power of Alexander the Great were the causes of making Roman, Greek, and Arabic language international language for some period or for some ancient time. Again, why did Spanish, Portuguese, and the French find their way into the Americans, Africa, and the Far East? Even we see that in case of the America, where many people use Spanish, Portuguese, and the French language. Why? This is for the colonial policies of the Renaissance kings and the queens, and the way these policies were ruthlessly implemented by armies and the navies all over the known world. So the people all over the world, they also dominated by the Renaissance kings and queens. They spread their colony, especially for the power of their army and the navy. And for this reason, we see the existence of Spanish, Portuguese, and French language in America. So again, the power is important, the power of the people. The history of the global language can be traced through the successful expedition of its soldier and the sailor speaker. And the English, as we see, has no exception. So we have come in this point that the power of its people is very important for making a language global. So the English people once upon a time had the power. Still, they have the power at present. Okay, so this is the reason that English language has been the global language. But international language dominance is not solely the result of the military might. So military power is not only the one cause, one important cause, but not the sole cause. But international language, it may take a military powerful nation to establish a language, but it takes an economic powerful one to maintain and expand it. So first time, for the cause of the military power, a language may spread somewhere else. But for the cause of the economic power, that established language will spread and that language will be maintained. So first of all, military power will establish a language, and the second time, the economic power will flourish the language towards the other past, and the people will be using that language because they will not have alternative way not to in case of using the language. Let's see. This has always been the case, but it became a particularly critical factor in the 19th and the 20th century, with the economic developments beginning to operate on a global scale, supported by the new communication technologies, telegraph, telephone, radio, fostering the emergence of the massive multinational organization. So we see that in case of Britain, we have so a language becomes a global language mainly for the military power. And next time, the economic power. Let's see what happens in case of English language, especially the communication technologies, telegraph, telephone, and radio, and the multinational organization. These were basically initiated from English-speaking country, especially UK, Britain, and this is one reason. And the growth of competitive industry and the business brought an explosion of international marketing and advertisement. So communication technology and then international marketing and advertisement. The power of press reached unprecedented level, soon to be suppressed by the broadcasting media with their ability to cross national boundaries with electromagnetic age. Technologies chiefly in the form of movies and records fueled new mass entertainment industries which had a worldwide impact. So the scenario that we have seen there, that is telegraph, telephone, radio, international organization, marketing, advertisement, press, movies, records. These are the situations that were initiated in UK or in Great Britain. And for this reason, the people using this platform had no alternative but to use English language, because the technology was invented in UK or in Great Britain, and next time the pattern and everything we see that is in English language. So if you are in a position to make international communication, you have to communicate through telegraph, telephone, or technology. But the language, of course, we have to use one language at that time. That is the English language. The drive to make progress in science and technology fostered an international intellectual and research environment which gave scholarship and further education a high profile in case of research and international education. Also, English-speaking country, that is England, had played a very great role. So, people all over the world, they did not have alternative but to use English language. So they are ready to speak. So first time the English people had military power, but second time they had the technological power, the economic power, international organization, and the communication technology, mass communication technology, telegraph, radio, reports, movie, press, everything were initiated and flourished with the hand of the English-speaking people. So the people who are living in the other parts of the world, they do not have the alternative but to use this technology for the global communication. And they have only one language, that is the English language. So they are bound to use this technology and they are bound to use this language. They do not have other way or other language to use in this technology. So a new language at the center of such explosion of international activity would suddenly have found itself with a global status. And English, as we shall see, was apparently in the right place at the right time. So in this scenario, we see that in the middle, in the nucleus, one language was used. That is the English language. Why? By the beginning of the 19th century, Britain had become the world's leading industrial and trading countries. Okay, so previously, in up to the 16th, 17th century, Latin, Greek, French, Portugal, Spain, they did the power. But from the beginning of the 19th century, we see Britain became the center of industrial and trading country, as well as the technological advancement we have seen. And by the end of the century, by the end of the 19th century, the population of USA, another English-speaking country, then approximately 100 million, was larger than that of any other countries of the Western Europe, and its economy was the most productive and the fastest growing in the world. So at the back of 19th century, we see another emerging economic power, that is the USA. So they, in case of the Britain, they have the technological power, telegraph, radio, television, media, press, but at the end of the 19th century, USA came forward and they became the economic power. British political imperialism had sent English around the globe. It is, and during the 19th century, so that it was a language on which the sun never sets. So the Britain, they had the economic, political, economic, and the technological power, and the USA became a economic power. So two English-speaking countries, that is UK and the USA, they became the storehouse of all powers that we are discussing. That is the military power, economic power, and also the technological power. So the people living the other parts of this world, they have nothing to do but to accept a language that is the global language. And during the 20th century, this world presence was maintained and promoted almost single-handedly through the economic supremacy of a new American superpower. So economics replaced politics as the chief driving force. And the language behind the US dollar was English. So the Britain became the military power, and next time USA became the economic powerful country as well as the military powerful country. And for this reason, the people living the other parts of this world, they do not have the alternative but to use English language. So we can conclude that a language becomes a global language mainly for the cause of military power. But military power established a language, a global language. But that language doesn't give the guarantee to spread that global language. In this regard, the economic power and the cultural power and the technological advancement, as we see that all things were initiated by two English-speaking countries, that is UK and next time USA. And for this reason, English became the global language. So thank you very much.